All right. Hey, everybody. My name is Jason Haddix. We're going to do a workshop today for AI agents for Blue Teams. I'm going to give it a couple minutes for everybody to filter in, and then we'll get started at like 10:02 or somewhere around there. My time. I'm in Mountain Standard Time in Colorado, so yeah, should be a good time. Hey, Ethan, how you doing? Hey, Daniel. Greetings from Greece. Is it like super hot in the U? Is it super hot in Greece right now? Like crazy hot? Yeah. I have some family visiting in Europe, and they're just like it's sweltering. So yeah. Well, maybe we can make some agents, Anthony, that make it look like you're working, but really you're just relaxing and having a drink. Nice soft drink at work, you know? In Sri Lanka, very cool. Love it. All right, we'll get started in a couple minutes. And yeah, I think we got some bangers today. As far as some agents that I cooked up last night for the course. Um, Some of them are not exactly CTI like specific, but they're all blue team related. So we're gonna do one, two, three, four, five, six. We're gonna do 6 skills today. I'm gonna talk about the overview and the architecture of just kind of what I put together last night, how uh how like human led design leads to good skills and good things to help with. I'm going to talk about kind of platforms you can use to build your skills and your agents, and then we're going to go from there. Yeah. So. Netherlands checking in. Nice. Kenya. Wow. We got quite the crew. All right. Let's get it cracking. Everyone, my name is Jason. I basically am a AI addict. I do a ton of AI developments, and you could call me a vibe coding king. But I do a ton of tools development, and I've built a couple products now with AI, and so Blair asked me to come and do a kind of Blair Academy training on AI agents for Blue Teams. And so I was like, yeah, sure. We do some of this in one of our classes, and we can come and like show off just some stuff that we can make really quick as templates for you to go forward with and understand and everything like that. So today's workshop will be like almost entirely live. I don't really have many slides for you except for the title slide and just kind of some separator slides that we're going to use. We're going to be mostly watching my desktop, and I'll be talking about like how I orient these skills, how they end up being agents, how to schedule them autonomously, and then kind of a couple of things that I made. Mostly everything I made last night is either um, was either made completely last night before the talk because I am a giant ADHD person and I did it last minute, and or came from our assessment skills and I removed the private parts of the agents and skills that we use here at Arcanum, and made new versions of them for the course. So or for the workshop here. So that's kind of where we are right now. So let's get it started. Um, Okay, so the first thing I want to talk about is just accomplishing tasks in general in cybersecurity, because every task that you do can be accomplished, usually one of three ways. In cybersecurity, any work that you do can be accomplished via the command line, right? A large portion of cyber operations, tool calling, log analysis, offensive security tools, like port scanning, even web testing can be executed through curl or something like that on the command line. And so like 85-90% of what you do, even though we use a lot of GUIs and stuff like that, can be done via the command line. And then if you can't do that, well, there's probably a product that has a product or like a web call that you can use, like a web API that you can use to get what you need. And those are either available freely or available for pay. And then there's very few instances where the only thing that you can do to execute an action, like, let's say you're a big Splunk shop, right? And like, maybe let's pretend in a world Splunk didn't have an API, right? Maybe you're working with a newer SIM vendor who hasn't finished their API yet, but you like their features or something like that, or a CTI platform. Then you may only be able to use a web GUI. And through AI, using a number of different tools, we can actually interact with any three of these type of ways of doing work. And so on the command line, you can use an agent harness like Claude Code, which we're going to use a lot of Claude Code today. And then, but that's not the only agent harness you can use. And then if you need to access only a website or an API, you can use things like the built-in fetch, which is built into Claude Code or agent frameworks, or you could use curl on the command line. You can use a bunch of MCPs that exist, or you can use in the last or in the third bucket, you can use something that drives actually the browser, which would be like Chrome Dev Tools or Puppeteer. And these things actually can fill in forms and click on buttons and read the screen data on a web browser, or the DOM more specifically, right? And so this is why agents have become so powerful, is because the 85% of what we do as security people can still usually fit in the first bucket over here and can be done on the command line. And when you hook up AI to the command line, you can do some amazing stuff. Um, and then when you need to do the other ones, they are available to you actually through AI and adding just some general tools or using the built-in tools, but also they do slow down the process a tiny bit, but they can also make it more workable in some cases, right? So a lot of our stuff here at Arcanum, we actually drive a real browser for. And we do a lot of offensive work. And so when we need to fully map out a site and everything like that, we use one of these web interaction tools and stuff like that. So this is kind of just like setting the stage for like mostly anything you want to do in security, you can accomplish via the command line, if not almost everything. And then there are other ways to accomplish tasks with AI that has access to just a couple of extra tools. So now, we're going to do a whole bunch of stuff in the demo today, and I'm going to show you some skills. Um, most of them I did. Most of them I did last night, and then some of them are modifications of skills that we've done before in the class. Now, I will provide to Flare the skill files for your agent harness so that you can use the ones that we did today. But I just want to say that they're templates that more than anything else, right? So the one we're going to start off with is a OSINT tool, and then we're going to move into an attack surface management agent, and then we're going to move into an open threat intel feed agent, and then we're going to move to a report to detection agent, and then we're going to move into a threat modeling, AI threat modeling skill, and then a tabletop skill. And then I'm going to show you just also like tying it all together. So we'll have a lot of content here, and then I'll provide to the Flare team, and I'm sure they can distribute it through Discord. They can distribute to Discord what the package will look like, or like if it's going to be a zip or something like that, but it'll have the skill files too. So, okay. So let's talk about kind of the needed tools to follow along today. What we're going to need is an agent harness. And what an agent harness is it basically takes an AI model as we know it, whether that's Claude or OpenAI's GPT 5.5, or an open source model or open weights model like GLM 5.2. It basically takes that and it wraps it with a piece of software. And that piece of software is able to add tool calls, meaning that the AI agents can now do things like web search and execute in code sandboxes and stuff like that. And they also have access to your local command line to do anything they need to with the tools that are installed on your computer. And they also allow you to scale launching several AI queries at once. And so this is an agentic architecture, we call it, meaning that the user has a chat with some sort of agent harness, and the agent harness will basically spawn up multiple AI agents at one time in parallel and go try to accomplish the task, each usually taking a small piece of the work. And so you're going to need an agent harness. And so I'm going to talk about two agent harnesses primarily that we use here, but these are not the only agent harnesses, and you'll notice that I'm missing a big one when I talk about them. But then also I'll talk about another wrapper around agent harnesses at a higher level that I think is super cool. So first agent harness I'm going to talk about is obviously the big one that everybody uses is Claude Code, right? Now, Claude Code started off its life as a TUI. And so we're going to break out into my desktop here. Today, we're not going to use the TUI. The TUI stands for Terminal UI. And so a lot of agent harnesses you deal with through like this terminal UI. But today, I'm actually going to use Claude Desktop because I think it's visually really easy to understand. So let me open up my Claude Desktop here and move it over here. So this is my Claude desktop, and if I go here, you can see that this is a GUI app, Claude Desktop, and I'm in the Claude Code section of Claude Desktop. So on the upper left here. And so this is an agent harness, right? If I ask it to do something in a new session, it will spawn up multiple AI calls to accomplish that task and script them together. Now, the big thing that happened during like the advent of AI, like a year and 8 months ago was, or a year and 6 months ago maybe, was skills. And the idea that you could build an agent and you could build an agent by just talking to this harness, right? Before, when you wanted to build an agent that did something autonomously or on a schedule or whatever, you actually had to write it in languages like LangChain or something similar like that, and it was a development project. You actually had to know some code. You had to know how to pass data between agents and stuff like that. When Claude Code launched the protocol for what we call agent skills, or skills for short now, skills you can actually prompt into existence. I can talk to my computer and say, build this skill. And it is an agent. And so then you just call it forevermore, and it does the action that you want. And you can think of skills and agents as little small workers that do an individual thing. And so we are going to go over 5 agents today. One called OSINT Enrich, one just which is an ASM one to find hosts. One is an open thread intel feed, and these all build artifacts for us to use in our day-to-day driving. And so we'll go over each of these as we go. But you can see here, I have like Claude Code, and then I can see all my sessions, right? I have them grouped by things. I'm trying not to dox myself here. But I have like a research bucket and everything. These are all my Claude Code sessions, each chat session. And then I have like this demo one down here, which we're going to use today. And so I have the OSINT, the ASM, and stuff here. And we're going to drive into these. So now, this is Claude Code Desktop. Most of you will have been using maybe the Claude Code TUI, the terminal UI, the one that shows up either in PowerShell or in your Linux environment. And you've been talking to Claude Code through that. It's really just the same thing. This is just a GUI version of that. And they have all the same features. In fact, the TUI version of Claude Code has more features than the desktop version. I just think that for instruction, the desktop version is cool to kind of open up. So now, a lot of people in enterprise security or cybersecurity, they may not have access to Claude Code, and then other people may not have access to paid models of Claude, right? Meaning that it can get pretty expensive to have that Pro Max subscription and do cool things with the Anthropic ecosystem, and it gets more expensive every day. And so I also like to offer an alternative for people who can't use Claude specifically, but might be able to use something either cheaper or open source. And so the other agent framework that we have is Open Code. And I don't know how many of you have heard of Open Code before, but here, Open Code looks just like Claude Code. And yes, I know I have assessment over here. This is for an open scope bug bounty. So I'm not doxing anything here, but you can go here and in Open Code, it feels very much like the Claude Code desktop, right? Except for in Open Code, you can see that I can add a whole bunch of other model vendors here. And so you could hook it up to, Copilot. You can hook it up to ZAI's cheaper models, GLM 5.1 and 5.2. You can hook it up to Minimax's models. And then you can also just you can hook it up to local models as well. So let's say I hosted a local model on this box, like, maybe the newest version of open source Minimax, or, I wanted to add GLM 5.2 or one of the new Mistral models, or anything. This has the option to add any, like pretty much almost any model. It will work with Ollama, so you can connect open code to Ollama. Now, what this does is it emulates Claude Code. What it'll do is it'll turn that model into basically an agent, and instantiate multiple runs of it at the same time. And so here, like, I have connected GLM2. I've been playing around with this model. If you haven't heard of GLM2, it is kind of the first open weights model that we've had that has come out and really challenged Claude Code at the Opus 4.8 level. And so it is a fantastic model, and it's accessible to a lot of people. It's cheaper, but the default that we use here at Arcanum is Claude Code usually. So this is an alternative if you want to use a agent harness that can handle almost anything, almost any model. You can use open code, and this is their desktop GUI version. They also run in the TUI version, like Claude Code. More of their features are available in their TUI, and if you want to check them out, you can just go to open code here, and this is what their TUI looks like, right? It looks just like Claude Code. And so you can see it like doing its thing in their demo thing on GitHub here. But we're going to be using Claude Code for mostly everything. And yeah, I just wanted to show you that this was another example of something we could use. We also are going to show at the end, we're going to show a application called Maestro, which is a wrapper around a agent harness, and I'll talk about Maestro at the end of the day today. But we're gonna jump into kind of building skills inside of Claude Code next. So let's see here. What order of operations do I have today? Okay, so Claude Code, open code. We'll talk about Maestro in a little bit. Okay, OSINT enrich. Let's start with our first skill, and I'll walk you through what a skill is. So let's say I just open up my Claude Code, right? I open up Claude Code and I'm ready to do some security work or whatever. Well, the first thing that Claude does in the background is it loads basically this directory of agents or skills. And what it does first is it loads up all their names so that I can reference them by name, basically. And those are all stored in a skill folder. Now, on my Windows machine, those skills are located in a .claude folder under my username here and under skills. And so here are all my skills that I've built at Arcanum to do different things in the red and blue domain. And we're going to use a few of these today that I just built last night. So these are, I have quite a bit of skills. So as soon as I open Claude Code, it looks in this folder and it's like, cool, Jason has built a bunch of skills and they're located inside these folders. Now, what does a skill actually look like? Well, a skill is really just a markdown file. And so a markdown file, the markdown file that Claude is looking for is called skill.md. And inside skill.md, you have a whole bunch of text in markdown. And so in order for Claude Code to know what this is, the mandatory fields are like a description here, OSINT enrich, and then you have like a full description and usage and examples and all this stuff. And I'm going to get into all this, but this is what a skill looks like under the hood. So the first thing that Claude Code does when it opens is it first looks for this description section. And this isn't even in the right format, but it'll still pick it up when I want to use it. But it'll look for this top level piece right here. And it knows that if I ever say OSINT enrich, or if I ever say OSINT enrich, it's going to look through the skills folder and then load the rest of this markdown. And the rest of this markdown tells it what it does. So generate a comprehensive, intelligent dossier on individuals or organizations using only public sources, create a detailed profile, identity, email addresses, professional history, social media presence, network connections, usernames, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Create a dossier for this person. And so inside of a skill, you can define usage. So here I'm saying most often I'm going to call OSINT enrich on a target name. So like Dave Kennedy of Trusted Sec, today we're going to do actually Eric from Flare. So we're going to do an OSINT profile on Eric, which shouldn't have anything private. I should have pruned anything that came out that was kind of like wild or anything like that. He didn't have anything wild, but we're gonna do that. So and then we not only go through the examples how this called, but what it's supposed to do. So every dossier needs to include an identity summary, email addresses and contact information, mandatory, professional profiles, social media presence, network affiliations, public activities, technical contributions, usernames and handles, which is mandatory because we're using this. Usually, our team uses this to start profiling people for spear phishing and red teaming, basically. But this can also be used. This same skill, this OSINT enrich skill, could be run on like if you want to protect your entire executive crew, right? Let's say you have 12 executives and you're really worried about them getting phished and what their social handles leak and what email addresses attackers most likely will send phishes to. You could use this skill for good too. And then top 5 phishing pretext. So if you don't know what a pretext is a pretext is the like wording I use in a spear phishing email. I try to find something that I think you will vibe with, basically, and click on any links because it is very close to what you care about, or it triggers like your sense of contribution or something like that. And so the skill defines what we're looking for in every single place in this report. And then we have a hidden module, which is kind of scary. And this is a nerfed version of our hidden model, but our hidden module. But it is still important to understand too, because this is the kind of stuff that like real bad guys are doing. And I thought the Flare audience would really appreciate and understand this module. So this module is called Sphere of Influence in the report. It's a hidden section of the dossier that also uncovers the target's closest circle, like their family and friends. And so it will tell you, hey, this person has a close relationship with this person. So if you're a real bad guy, you could phish, the kids or the wife of your target because they will reside on the same network. And if you can break into their computer at some point, you might be able to break into your target's computer at some point. So this is a section that I'll show you what it looks like when all this runs. Okay, so you have all this stuff here. I have some tools defined in this for this one in specific, for this OSINT enrich skill. I use a third-party API to scrape Twitter. It's called GetX API. If you're interested, it's a super cheap, um, basically X scraper, right? Because a lot of my spear phishing is based off of what people post on social media. So in our full one, we have scrapers for every social media profile: LinkedIn, Twitter, or X, whatever you want to call it. We even have like a Reddit scraper. We have all this stuff in our red teaming one. But in this one, I just kept the Twitter one. And so it will go out and do searches on the target's name using a Python script that I include in this skill. And you have to give it an API key for GetX API. And so this is just defining how we'll go out and do this, right? And then it'll apply it at different levels of the report. And then I define sources it should try to scrape. So in this one, it only has an API to scrape Twitter and X, but if there is public cached information for LinkedIn or GitHub, if any of these places don't require an API to pull OSINT data from, it'll just go grab them using WebFetch. It's web scraping tool, Claude Code's web scraping tool. And then brand rules, and it has like a report. I basically put it into a report that we do, etc. Some guidelines, mandatory checklist, and stuff like that. At the end is just like kind of reporting stuff. So let's look at what this looks like. And I'll show you the output, but I'll show you invoking it too. So let's go to Claude Code and let's go to new session. And let's kill these. And then I like to talk to my computer, right? So I use a tool called WhisperFlow. I don't know how many of you, have used WhisperFlow before, but it is fantastic. WhisperFlow allows you to press a button on your computer and talk to your computer, and it transcribes pretty quickly. And so I'll do that here. And so I'll just be like, new session, Claude Code. Let's use the OSINT enrich skill on Eric Clay from Flare. Okay, so this will look through that folder of all of my defined skills, and then it should find OSINT enrich, what it did right here, right? It found it, found our skill, and now it's going to start to kick off. It's going to start to kick off an OSINT enrich run on Eric Clay. And if you don't know Eric, he's awesome. He's one of my really good friends, and he leads a whole bunch of groups at Flare, and I think he's backstage at one point. But yeah, so he's awesome. Now, what this is doing is as soon as it loaded the skill, it now has all those directives that were in Markdown, right? And so now Claude, the main conversational agent, is going to decide how to break up that work and give it to sub-agents. And it's going to decide on which scripts to run, like the X search one that I talked about there that uses that API. It's going to run that here. And so it has some errors and like escaping. It'll fix these if there's any problems in that Python script. So I don't super have to worry about it. It'll fix anything that I have maybe fat fingered in the script. So it's going. Now, while this is running, it's going to take a while to download all of Eric's tweets and Flare tweets that mention Eric. It's going to do a whole bunch of stuff. So I pre-ran it last night. And let me give you a preview of what the output looks while it's going. So we'll open that. Oh, move that over. And then on my desktop, let's see here. Where are we? There we go. Okay. So at the end of the run, it'll build both a Markdown file and an HTML file. And after like doing all of its work, and then eventually it looks like this. So this is Eric's dossier from the skill. And so I really like to, let's see here. Hold on. Yeah, I really like to brand everything and have like a HTML report. So Claude in general and any agent framework, when it provides you output information, it can provide you Markdown, which a lot of us are really used to working in Markdown in the security space, but I really like a visual report to pass around to people. And so this is, this is kind of the report template we use at Arcanum. And so we can go into the report. Okay, so public information only, defensive use, that's fine. So our subject is Eric Clay. He's the CMO and co-lead of Threat Intel at Flare, greater location, Seattle, Washington. And then this was run last night. Now, identity summary. So Eric Clay, LinkedIn display Eric C, primary handle Eric Clay on LinkedIn, and Eric Clay.IO on the Flare blog. We already have all this. Here's the email addresses that we could find. So eric.clay, e.clay at flare.com. And then Eric actually used to run his own agency for marketing. So here's his old email address for his marketing agency is Eric at Vail Creative. And then he's also used an alias before to post things as press.flare.o and hello.flare.o. So as a red teamer or defensive-minded person, we're going to have to monitor these his inboxes like pretty hardcore, right? With like additional tuning for phishing and stuff like that. Now, professional profile is basically scraped from his LinkedIn, right? So his early jobs, his founder and CEO job as a cybersecurity marketing agency lead, and then CMO and co-lead at Flare. And then his education and credentials, his social media presence, so /IN Eric Clay, his Flare blog articles, live streams that he's done, his SANS profile, because he's done some videos on SANS, kind of his org chart. I actually haven't used the org in a little while. I don't know how it's looking right now. It didn't catch Eric's X and Twitter, which I'm pretty sure he has one. So here's a failing of the agent in a way where we're going to have to tune it. And one of the things I talk about is it's not as easy as just like telling Claude Code to build a skill because Claude Code has a skill builder. It is the iterative process of making a skill good has a lot of tuning to it, right? And so for something I've done here, it wasn't able to correctly get, or verify a number of X or Twitter accounts that might be Eric's. Which is a big fail for me on this part. So I'll have to go back and tune this part of the skill and see what's going on. GitHub, Mastodon, Blue Sky. I don't know his social profiles there, so we'll have to keep them going. So network and affiliation. So Eric Clay, Matthew Lavoie, he's also the CTN co-founder, so worked closely with him. Public activities, webinars he's done, media commentary, technical contributions and research. So papers he's done or blogs he's done. And then username and handle variants are useful in phishing. So um, okay. Eric Clay IO, Eric Dash Clay, Eric C. So, pretty much whatever. So we did see that there is an Eric N Clay on Twitter and an Eric Clay IO on Twitter, but the agent couldn't verify this is the same Eric Clay. So we have it listed here, and we can go manually look at that. And that's also an area of identified kind of improvement here. Is that like, okay, well, if I do need to manually verify, why didn't the agent hyperlink this so I could just click it and go check, right? And so that might be an area of improvement to prompt the skill, right? So here's the phishing context, right? So that it builds five, I think five, yeah, top five phishing pretexts that I could use against Eric. So one is a joint research pretext. So if I email Eric and I'm like, hey, I'm from this big malware company. We do a lot of like analysis of Stealer logs. We want to work with Flare because we have like 4.2 million fresh logs. Do you want to co-author and do some work on this data set before we publish? So it's taking the fact that Eric works, at a CTI company, and we might have this awesome data source that we could do data analysis on and make people better with, kind of building CTI tooling and knowing what's being sold out there and all that kind of stuff. It can, this is kind of the lure, and then you would draft an email, and then just hopefully he clicks on some link inside of this. So this is phishing pretext number one that it generated. The next is headlining or keynoting or doing a podcast booking. So this one comes up with a lot of people who do public speaking. So using the fact that, hey, I'm starting a new conference. It's a dark web track. We've seen your articles in other places. We really want you to come present at our conference, right? Click here for the CFP or something like that, and then you could attempt to phish him there. Another one is an appeal to urgency. So Eric has released a tool called Odin, and via Flare's research post, and you could send an email to Eric as a phish that says, "Hey, your Odin agent leaked customer data in the source code that you built, and you need to take a look at this, and I'm responsibly disclosing a vulnerability for the project you built." Nothing is more scary than this to people who write code, right? It's like, oh crap, I released a piece of code with a vulnerability in it, or I leaked customer data or something like that. If there's a link in here to like a GitHub, link or something like that, or it looks like a GitHub link, most likely people will click on this to see the vulnerability that they made or something like that. So industry analyst briefing request, internal kind of stuff. If we spoofed Matthew or somebody internal at Flare, these are at the low area of the phishing kind of world. So and then you have all the sources that come out from this. So this is just a starter dossier for someone on a red team or someone on a blue team to kind of know where maybe we need to at least for these email boxes enable all the bells and whistles inside of E5 or E4 in Microsoft to make sure that all of the security features are turned on for these email boxes. You could run this on the entire C-suite of Flare just to make sure that we know exactly what's out there and exposed and what to protect first. And then, like I said, we have um, a sphere of influence section here, and Eric's OPSEC is pretty good. So we have a hidden button over here that shows basically the sphere of influence. And so, the closest ones, at least from internet research that the agent could tell, the closest people he's closest with at Flare would be Nick Ascoli and Matt Dulava. And no family to be mentioned online, so his OPSEC's pretty good. And and these two people here, we can get a little bit of information on them. Now, the other OSINT profile I'll show you here is Dave Kennedy. And Dave Kennedy runs Trusted Sec, and Trusted Sec is one of the companies that we look up to here at Arcanum as a red teaming and offensive security company, and they do super cool work. And Dave has been the profile of several of my demos, and he usually laughs about it, so we're cool here. But you can see same kind of information here. We get email addresses, corporate role email addresses, history. You get he has much more social stuff. So he's on a podcast. He's on their blog. He has his own GitHub, which we identified here, and there's a whole bunch of repos that are applied to not only Dave but also Trusted Sec. His LinkedIn and his Twitter, and then network affiliations, technical contributions, usernames, and handle variants. So David Kennedy, Hacking Dave is his hacker handle. If you've known Dave, everybody knows that. Trusted Sec is his company, and then Binary Defense also was listed up here, which is his secondary company. And then he has a third company called We Hack Health. So this also might be something that I would improve this agent with. Is ask it why it didn't pick up those other two companies as usernames or handle variants that were in this table. Maybe it's just limiting it to like the top 5 here, because I think Eric's was 5 too. So that might be an area for improvement for this bot. We have phishing pretexts, and then with Dave, he talks about a lot of stuff online, including his family. And so if I go to the secret button in the bottom right, so you can see his area of influence or his sphere of influence, which has a ton of his family here. And so one time he posted that, he loved his dad. And so now we have his dad's social profile here, and we can click into this and also socially profile his dad. But you can also see the closest sphere of influence is his wife and his kids, and then his coworkers, and then people he's done open research with, and people he's worked on different projects with. And so this is how scary some of the attacker tooling is getting right now, right? Like this specific sphere of influence feature for the OSINT module is it has already been emulated by bad guys I've seen on the internet. And so this is something, as a blue teamer, it gets kind of hairy, right? I think the discussion here that I hear a lot is like, well, I work at the enterprise and I would love to use a tool like this to advise our executives or all of our staff about their sphere of influence and what's exposed, but I'm not responsible for like their personal and their families' like digital profile, right? And the line is blurring so much in what the attacker is willing to go after these days, is that we kind of do have to become stewards of some of that information, at least being able to give them the visibility of saying, hey, just with an agent that ran over, 25 minutes that I vibe coded in Claude Code last night, I can find out that here's your dad's profile, here's your wife's profile, here's your kid's profile. And and then this type of OSINT report, you could enrich with the Flare API. I haven't done that, but our internal one does do this. So it takes all of these usernames and the sphere of influence usernames, and it runs them through the Flare API, where I get all of their creds that are mentioned in Stealer logs and in breaches, basically. And then I can attempt to attack their their closest sphere of influence entries. And so I vibe coded this last night, and if I can do it, bad guys can do it. Although some bad guys are not as good as me, so that's okay. So that is OSINT enrich. Now, again, I'll show you what the skill looks like. It's just Markdown and it's just text, right? So if I go here back to VS Code, right? Basically, Claude Code is reading this skill here, right? OSINT enrich, and then it's doing all of the things I told it to do in here. Now, how did I create this skill, right? Like, how did, I have a text file existing here, and then it's already loaded in Claude Code, and Claude Code ran it last night. But how did I get here? Well, I'll show you. I basically talk to AI. So I'll put this over here on the right-hand side, and then I'll open Claude Code desktop on the left side. And then I'll start a new session. And then I will basically iteratively build these skills. So I will do something like this. Skills as a concept, it started out a concept in Claude Code, but now it is an accepted format for all agent harnesses. All of them use skills. So Open Code, Codex, Claude Code, and any other agent harness that you use supports skills. So Claude has a built-in skill generator, and so really all I just have to say is we're going to build a skill. So let me use voice to do this. We are going to create an OSINT enrich skill that is designed to help blue teamers run social profiles on employees and executives for strengthening their social media and enterprise and credential leaking kind of profile. I'm going to use fancy words here. The OSINT enrich profile or the OSINT enrich skill should generate a report or a dossier that has their social profiles, any email addresses we can find them, any email address we can find them, social professional history, social media links, network connections of people that they talk to regularly or they interact with. Most importantly, usernames, notable activities they've done recently, and then 5 phishing pretexts that we could strengthen them against if they were being red teamed. See if we're missing anything. And so you'll see that skills design has a lot to do with how knowledgeable you are in the area already, right? I have done a ton of red teaming, and so I know I need all this information. So when I design the skill, I specifically design it with my human knowledge of how to do red teaming, what I need in the skill. But let's just start with this. I'm just going to say one more thing here to Claude. We already have an OSINT enrich skill, but I'm making a second skill to demo to show how skills are made and prompted into existence with text. So make a new one and don't draw from the old one. Okay, let's just start with that and see where we get. So I'm using Claude Code. Claude Code is driving a whole bunch of instances of Opus 4.8 on high reasoning. Okay, we're gonna let this run and generate the skill. We'll come back to it in a second. Okay. So it's like, okay, where do skills live on the system? That's fine. It's not going to load the old one, but it's still reading the directory. So we'll let it go for a couple seconds. So, okay. So that's our first skill that we're building. And then that's how kind of I prompt into existence. Now, I mentioned that this had some changes that I would like to make to it, right? We weren't able to find social profiles or link social profiles of Eric here. And also, I would have loved to the ones that it thought might be working. I would love to have had these hyperlinked, right? And so, in the original OSINT enrich skill that I built last night, not the new one we're doing right now, I can just prompt that request into existence as well. So, um, in the Eric Clay demo, under username and handle variants, you suggested some plausible and unconfirmed X or GitHub accounts that might have been from Eric. And in order for me to manually verify those, we should have them hyperlinked there so that I can just click on them and verify them if I need to. Okay, so that's how you make an edit to a skill. You can just naturally language prompt, and it will go out and do this. So this will work on fixing that here, and hopefully next report we run on Eric, this will be linked, and I can just actually go check to see if these are valid or not valid. Now this is a standalone HTML report, right? So this is an artifact, a snapshot in time. It's not a live website that updates, right? So if I want to rerun with these things linked, I'm gonna have to rerun the whole profile again most of the time. So we'll we'll return to that. So that's OSINT enrich. That is the first skill. Let's see here. Too many tabs, everybody. I'm sure you're not aware of that problem. Okay. The next skill is one I call Agent ASM. Let's see here. Now, Agent ASM uses a whole bunch of reconnaissance tools behind the scenes to basically pull all of the external assets of a company. And so what I did is I prompted last night Agent ASM, and I'll show you the skill MD file in a second. I prompted last night, we have an internal recon tool. Now, in our recon tool at Arcanum, hold on one second. Sorry, the headphone's going crazy. Okay, cool. In our recon skill at Arcanum, which most ASM platforms are built off of reconnaissance methodologies. I'll answer that question in a second, Adam. Most of the sorry, lost my train of thought. Oh yeah, most of the ASM platforms you see out there, attack surface management, right, are built off of reconnaissance tools that either red teamers or pen testers or bug bounty hunters have authored. And so when you use an ASM platform that's out there in the world and you pay for it or whatever, it's supposed to go out and it's supposed to find all of your externally facing assets. It's supposed to dive really deep into that, including acquisitions and subdomains and like hidden stuff that you may not know about. And so that's the value of an ASM program. Now, better ASMs will also give you, some vulnerability data. They'll say like, oh, these sites, have certificate errors or they have these vulns in this software. And so they'll use some vulnerability scanning software. A lot of them use nuclei behind the scenes for vulnerability scanning. And so there's levels to how good ASM, products are, right? But for this demo, I basically took our Arcanum reconnaissance skill. It has like 22 modules to it, and it takes a while to run. And so I didn't want to do like a super long run on Flare. So I pared down and built a new smaller ASM skill, which I'm going to provide to you guys. And the ASM skill runs a lot quicker because it just uses, like 5 of those pieces of the methodology. But Agent ASM can start something like this. Let me show you here. Hold on. Pull up my Claude code. And I'll actually show you how I created it last night from scratch. So here's my Claude code desktop, right? And I said, hey, we have a skill for doing reconnaissance that has our full methodology in it. I just want to do a demo one that I can create an HTML ASM report for external assets, keep the techniques in our in-depth one that are fast so we can return live for users. Also brand it in the Arcanum report template. So it goes off and it builds this new skill. It decides which are the fastest things. And then it builds a report template for me, which is cool. And then eventually now it builds a skill called ASM report. So it's called ASM report. And then let's just run it on Flare. So if we go new session here, let's run the ASM report skill on flare.io. And we got to make sure we do the domain right. Okay, so behind the scenes, if we go to our VS Code and we want to go look at this skill, again, we can go to the skills folder here in Claude, go to skills, and we're looking for ASM report. Here's the skill. And then we can open the skill.md file in VS Code and read what's in there. Okay, so this one has the proper formatting for skills. Normally, you're supposed to wrap the description in these 3 dashes here. So this one actually has the proper skills format. The other one didn't, which is interesting. I don't know why, but it still works. Remember, this is just markdown to guide the agent into doing the piece of work. So this one says runs fast passive subset of full recon methodology against external target and packages the result as a polished Arcanum branded attack surface management report. Single contained HTML file, optional PDF styled, blah, blah, blah. Returns live in seconds to 1 minute, passive domain, enumeration, DNS resolution, HTTP probing only, no brute force permutation or screenshots. Used when the user asks for a quick external scan or what exposed for whatever. This is not a full pen test. Do not use, we have an internal tool called Armada that does full autonomous pen testing. Don't run all of that because Claude Code has a connector into that. Don't just start like a giant pen test. This is just, this is just for this one thing. Okay, so the description here, let's see here. So it'll generate reports. That's fine. What the skill includes. So fast techniques. So Subfinder, DNSX, HTTPX is all this is doing off the bat. And so if you're not familiar with these tools, Subfinder is a tool to find subdomains for a domain, and it scrapes a whole bunch of sources, and it's what most of your ASM platforms use in the background. It also uses the certificate transparency logs at cert.sh. It also takes all the things that it finds here and it does DNS resolution using a tool called DNX on the command line. And then it probes for web servers using a tool called HTTPX. This is a very standard workflow for a red teamer, a bug bounty hunter, whatever, to find assets when they're on a hunt of yours, but it can be used for defensive people to make an ASM. To make an ASM platform here. So, and then a whole bunch about like how to collect everything, scope check, what the commands look like for certain things, gotchas for HTTPX, and then how to report. So let's look at this and see what came out. Let's see here. If we go back to Claude Code, and it's still running. So, so cert.sh, we got 503. We're probably rate limited, I would say. I don't think cert.sh is down. I just think that we're rate limited here. So you got to be careful about getting rate limited from your sources. So cert.sh is not going to have data in this one, which sucks. And it's running a couple of the tools right now. So it's still running. It's been like 3 minutes. It's only running one agent right now. So otherwise it would say running like, multiple agents here. Now it's going to build. Now it's going to build the output. Now I pre-ran this last night, and I'll show you what the output looks like here. This is an external attack surface point in time scan for Flare. So this is last night, right? So just at flare.io, right? So the first thing is, we identified only one top level or apex domain for Flare, but we identified 41 subdomains. 27 of them have live web servers on them. But we also found 50 related unique IPs to Flare. And then we were able to do technology mapping on some of those entries, and then just 6 observations. I didn't ask the AI to do this. It did this on its own. And so it's really interesting that it put this in the report on its own. I really just wanted a list of hosts and assets for Flare, but it added these, so we're just going to see what it says. So the observations get put first, which I don't really like, so I would probably put these at the end. This was really supposed to be about finding assets. And so here in the observation, it says, hey, there's a whole bunch of dangling CNAMEs, or there's a whole bunch of like DNS entries that resolve to third-party places that give a 404. And so if you've ever been in the bug bounty space, or you've ever resolved a subdomain takeover vulnerability for your bug bounty program, or you're familiar with subdomain takeovers, right? Basically, at one point, Flare had a domain called flaredpublic.flare.io, and really that connected to CloudFront. And no longer is there any content or 404. There's no longer content at this address anymore. And so if we can register the same subdomain on CloudFront that Flare did, we could possibly, when people go to this URL, we could possibly have them land on our attacker controlled content. So this is not actually a vulnerability because CloudFront doesn't allow subdomain takeovers. And so SendGrid is really hard to do a subdomain takeover on. HubSpot's a little bit easier, so I might look into that one, or these last 3, but we would have to look into them. So these are just observations. Legacy JavaScript libraries, so they're using out-of-date jQuery on a couple of the subdomains. That's just like an informational, basically. It's not actually medium. And this, you'll find this a lot with AI vulnerability scanning, is that it will highly inflate basically the things here, the risk or the exposure level or whatever. WordPress, marketing service, etc. Let's go down to the asset inventory, though. It creates a live asset inventory of everything it found. So here's all Flare subdomains with their resolving IP, status, title, and then technology applied to each site. So this is the data I wanted to get out of the ASM, and it did a pretty good job here. You can see there's a lot of 403s. But that doesn't mean that there's nothing on this. It just means that maybe there was no web content on this. So these might be used for other protocols. And then it tells a little bit about what it did at the bottom. So this skill, you might engage with a company that charges you $20,000 a year to do ASM. All the open source tools are out there to do ASM, and you can do them through an agent framework, and you can do a snapshot of this every morning and have it sent to you, and then diff it compared to yesterday's run. So you run it in the morning, like a lot of our stuff runs at 6 a.m. Mountain Time, like a lot of our skills run at 6 a.m. Mountain Time. And then we diff it from yesterday's 6 a.m. run. And the report actually is just like, what changed? Are there any new domains? Are there anything that we didn't know yesterday? And so that is an idea here. Now, I'm going to provide all the skills files for this, and let me jump into some of the questions real quick. Okay, so some of you are trying to, prompt Claude Code to build skills that are similar to the ones I'm showing, and getting what we call refusals in AI. So in order to work in cybersecurity, you will want to, at least in Claude, you will want to do the CSV program. So Claude CSV program. Is it CSV or CVS? Claude, what is like the CVP? Sorry, that's what I meant. I meant CVP. Thank you. Okay. Okay. So Claude has a form and a program that's called the Cyber Verification Program. And so you can click here on this link. You can just Google Claude CVP. Thank you. And you can apply to this. And when you apply to Claude's CVP, make sure you're holistic about telling them what you're going to use Claude for in cybersecurity. So when I did this program, I told them I would be using it for I will be using it for vulnerability research, red teaming, bug bounty hunting, and I went in depth into what I was doing in each, and that I was an authorized tester of my own company. Flare could say, "Hey, we're researchers at Flare," and even if you're an individual, you can apply to the CV program. You don't have to be part of an organization necessarily. You just tell them, "Hey, I'm an independent security researcher," and then they're going to ask you for your social profiles. They're going to ask you for your LinkedIn. They're going to ask you for some identifying data that they validate, just to show that you're a good person and you're doing good faith security research. And so they'll ask you for that. But many of my bug bounty friends who use Claude for bug bounty stuff, they don't belong to any organization. They're not a career pen tester. They just provide their information. They've gotten approved. So, you know, you basically, you can get approved for this even without being employed by someplace as a blue teamer or a red teamer. So once you set this up, it usually takes, sometimes it can get approved within a day, and sometimes it takes a couple weeks. My first application took a week and a half. And then once that happens, you will see less refusals. Now, it doesn't mean you won't see any refusals, because there are just some things that the model guardrails have been specifically tuned around not touching. And one of them is, since we're doing a Flare, webinar today, is credentials. Anytime you're working with leaked credentials, the model will refuse you even if you're in that program. And so that is one thing that I will warn you about. The way we get around here at Arcanum is if there's a workflow that we see that the agent is refusing to do. Like once you get in the CVP, you'll be able to use all these skills and build all these skills. That won't really be a problem, I don't think. But let's say you're trying to work with Flare stealer log data. The model might refuse you mid-run and be like, I don't want to work with you anymore. You're bad. Now, what do you do? Well, you just tell the AI, hey, I understand you don't want to work with that data and it's against your operating skills. Create a guide for a manual tester to do that portion manually, step by step. And then you just do it manually. Like if there's some operation it doesn't want to run on the command line to look through a whole bunch of stuff, just have it create a program for you to do that. And it's happy to create a program so that it doesn't have to do the analysis and ingest the leaked credentials. But it's happy to write a program for you to execute the API and grep it or do regex on it or do analysis on it. Usually it'll be happy to write that script for you to do it yourself. And so that's a lot of times here at Arcanum, what we'll do is we'll hit a workflow that the model absolutely won't do no matter what. And it's really cool. We understand, write a step-by-step guide and script for a manual operator to do it. And we'll do that part and then provide you the analysis. So there still is some human in the loop in some of these agents that we have to do manually. Now, the other option is you don't use a model that has refusals in it, right? So you can get access to models that are jailbroken or obliterated, we call them, and those are local models. The problem is local models are still a far cry away from the excellence of frontier models, right? Codex and GPT 5.5, um, Claude Code Opus 4.8 and above, they're all orders of magnitude better than the open source models you can host on your own computer. And so while you could use open code and you could hook it up to a local model and you could give it the skills we're working on today, and that local model that you're hooking it up to is jailbroken or unfettered in some way, obliterated or whatever, you can do that, but the output is not going to be as good as you using Opus, like in most areas. Um, Other things you can do for refusal management, and since this is just kind of like a live webinar, and I'm kind of just kind of trying to help everybody out, is you can include your scoping document or approval document on the file system and tell Claude, hey, I have approval for this testing on this on this target, if you can get the skill running to begin with. And then the agents will sometimes take that. Also, you can just try to brute force. You can start multiple clean sessions, Claude Code sessions, and just try over and over again until one goes through. We have found that to work, to like brute force sessions until one works. There's a lot of like refusal management type of tips that you can get. But the first one is to get into the cyber verification program, the CVP. So, all right. Yeah, I mean, I don't. I see George's. He's talking about, he created it based on a screenshot. Um, the guardrail should be pretty consistent. Like, it's not like because you did a screenshot, it like flew by past some kind of guardrail or whatever. It's just the inconsistency of LLMs, right? LLMs are non-deterministic systems, meaning that one time you may ask it to do something and it might refuse you or give you a certain output, and then you ask the same thing in a new session and it might not refuse you and it might give you a different output. And so this is something that you have to learn in AI, is like, if you get a refusal, just like shut that chat down, start a brand new one with fresh context, and try again, because that's just the nature of LLM. Sometimes things trip, sometimes things don't, and we've run into that a ton here. So, all right, let me ask my wonderful backstage people, if they're still around, if they're monitoring. How much time do we have for this webinar? Or was it 2 hours that we had scheduled? Or if anybody saw the schedule, I just want to make sure that we're on pace for content. Yeah, 2 hours. Okay, cool. 2 hours. Great. Thank you. Okay. Let's see, how many more do we have? Agent, we have open threat feed, report to detect. Okay. I think we're okay. Okay. So agent ASM, right? The the skills in Markdown, and I will send that to you. Now, the Markdown skill that got created for agent ASM, right, was based off a pre-existing skill that we had here at Arcanum. So it already had a pretty good, we've been using that skill for a couple years now, meaning that I have tuned it with my words and my voice over a long time to make it perfect. And our recon skill is one of our best skills hit our Arcanum. So when I said build a new skill called ASM report based off of the old one, we're already getting some pretty good methodology here. And so it basically filled this skill out with, like, it knew, what reporting I wanted, what the steps were, what the tools were that I already wanted. It knew all of that, right? But if you did this, if you didn't have access to my old skill, you might have a different looking skill file. And again, this is just part of the process. Is a lot of times we are looking for, or we are encoding our learned methodology, our learned experience as humans into the prompting or this markdown for the agent. And this is the difference between people who say, hey, I'm just going to vibe code something, to experts who make really awesome skills. And sometimes they're starting whole companies around building these agents, right? And skills are synonymous with agents in this workshop. So, okay, so that was ASM, right? And you could already replace a 20K platform with, a Claude Code skill, right? So that's a thing. Okay, so the next one I wanted to do was a threat intel feed. And I wanted to build just like a threat intel feed that shot off at first as an email every morning to me and maybe the SOC team or whatever. And I wanted it to basically take threat intel, feed information from open sources, and create a feed from like free, not open sources, but open and free sources, basically. And so I started here in Claude Code. Let me go back all the way up here. And I was real specific about what I was doing. And I said, hey, I'm doing a 2-hour live demo for Flare. And it like my whisper flow like did this. This is dumb. And it's a webinar about using and building Claude Code skills for Blue Team stuff. I want to build a skill that takes a whole bunch of open source threat intel feeds and pulls them together into one. So it went, and it's like, okay, here's kind of the most popular open feeds that you can give: Seats of Kev, ransomware.live, abuse ch URL house, abuse ch Fado tracker, the ISC diary overnight write-ups, the advisories RSS for CISA, the exploit probability scoring and CVE rank on first, openfish.com, and bleeping computer / the record security news RSS, which if you could turn those into threat feeds, it would be pretty cool, right? And then in order to enrich those, you would use cert.sh, Shodan, IP API, and URL scan, which are all free enrichment tools that you can script from the command line and have APIs. And so you can get geo information, cert information, IP information, and other stuff. So it identified this off the bat, and then it began to create like a smoke test to see if it get this to work. And then what it does is I have Claude Code hooked up to my Gmail. So when you have Claude Code running, there's a whole bunch of connectors you can add either in the TUI or through the GUI, and you can just click down here and be like connectors, and you can see that I have a whole bunch of connectors. I have NAN connector, Claude and Chrome connector, Webflow, Google Drive, Google Calendar, Google Gmail, and Claude Remote on, and Puppeteer. So those are all the connectors I have turned on. But for this one, in order to create a daily digest email, it needs at least to be connected to my email somehow. So Claude Code has the ability to connect to your email. So it went through and created a skill that will pull information from all those places. And I hadn't touched it yet. This is just it talking to itself and giving me output. And I'm like, cool, we have access to Flare. We have access to the Flare API. Can we enrich this thread intel feed with the Flare API? And so I had to provide it my API key, which I'm going to swiftly regenerate after this thing because I had to give it verbatim in an environment file. So we asked it there to enrich it, and then let's see what it came out with. And again, these are all demos I vibe coded last night. So I've looked at some of the output; they look like decent, but I haven't done everything yet. So let's see here. Where is the okay? How do I? Where is this? One of the things that I hate in APIs, it always gives you relatives paths and it doesn't give you full paths. So the output for this is in a folder somewhere. 1 second. Do, 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 do. It is in. No, when we do labs as part of our official classes, we play EDM music while things are going on. So you guys are Everybody hear me? Mic check. Yes. Okay, good. Okay, cool. All right. So the open thread intel feed skill, I prompted into existence as I showed you with that first paragraph, and then I made a lot of tweaks to it. But at the end of the day, it should be in a folder here. And what it will do is it tries to make it like company specific. So let me go to the output of the run and show you what it outputted just based on some preliminary prompting. Flare webinar, reports, brief flare. Okay. Okay. So it went out and pulled from those sources, basically from the Flare data, a whole bunch of stuff to give me like a custom report in the morning, right? And the idea is that I want something delivered to me that's actionable, that's not just like high level. And so what it shows me is that there's two mentions in the dark web. It's pulling this from the Flare API of if I worked at Flare email accounts, basically. Forum sellers advertising full Cloudflare source code, but it's unverified. Um, so this is probably false positive. There is just in the general world of security right now. There's a 0 day, an unauthenticated 0 day for an RCE in Oracle PeopleSoft, and then no infected stealer device exposure for Flare IO in this window, which means in the last 24 hours. So I am going to just look at this real quick. I didn't give a full eyeball. I want to make sure I'm not doxing anyone at Flare, but let's see here. Yeah, this has some credential stuff in it. So, okay, I'll skip over that section. Okay, so in it actually has, because I have the Flare data hooked up to it, it has a section called like proprietary exposure credentials, and it shows a whole bunch of Flare emails that possibly have credentials leaked. None of that's valid because Flare does a really good job of killing all that, and all those sessions have been killed. But it does tell me all the emails that I should be worried about, which I'm not going to dox anybody at Flare. Then it goes down into here where it's like threat flow, Flare AI, threat initiative. Um, so it gives us some pulls from the Flare data and our general feeds. It gives us some tactical threat intelligence on like things happening basically in general cybersecurity, like the PeopleSoft zero, people saying that Cloudflare is nuked, a one-click 0 day in WinRAR. I hope Flare is not using WinRAR to zip stuff internally. SEO alert, a ransomware breach. So this is coming all from those feeds that we're pulling in other places. Now, um, this is interesting kind of as like a news kind of thing. We also have our daily CISA Kev entries for the last 24 hours marked by CVE. We have new ransomware breaches, new ransomware and breaches posts. Some of them are confirmed, some of them are not confirmed, but you can go to the post link here. This is all from ransomware.live. And so you can kind of look through here and be like, oh crap, I bought my wife's wedding ring from like petradiamonds.com, and they're on ransomware.live. And so that's not good. Maybe credentials that I put into that system to log in are now exposed. Let me make sure I didn't reuse those anywhere or whatever. So a whole list for the last 24 hours is here. New malicious URLs that are hosting malware. This is all from URL House. Okay, so this is all cool as like kind of like a news source that we can do, but like, is this actionable? Well, no, you get a lot of these emails from your threat intel places already, right? What you want to do is you want to automate, hunting for this. So we're going to get to that in a separate skill. We're going to take the values that this gives us, like all of these IOCs, like these botnet IOCs, places where malware is being hosted on URL House, possibly some of this breach data, and we're going to automate, like, turning it into actionable automation. But right now, I just wanted to show you that like it's super easy to create your own threat feed in Claude Code and just tell it the sources you want. Now, these are all industry headlines, and then it gives you like the output here of like feed health. Now, this was the first run actually of this, and I did a whole bunch of refactoring with different prompts. So things I added to this were like, hey, You seem to be like focusing in on the CISA advisories, and then you also have like, the ISC diary and industry headlines, and that's cool. But I also want to look at practitioners who are doing either threat hunting or bug bounty work when they talk about new vulnerabilities, because a lot of times a lot of stuff gets broken on Twitter. News of a 0-day will get broken on Twitter. And so I use that same Twitter API that I talked about earlier to try to go through and see if in the last 24 hours there's been any individuals, rather than like Bleeping Computer or SANS or something like that, who have posted about 0 days that you could get ahead of, because you want to do some either like threat hunting, detection engineering, or patching before something happens. And so that's what I added to the newest version of this skill. And so let me see if there's a let's see here, newer version. Not for Flare. Let's see here. Have entries, malicious URLs. Industry highlights. Yeah, I'll have to figure out where the report went. Okay, so building this is super easy. And then if I move this away, you can see I also have it set up an email of just some highlights that are relevant to Flare as an email. So it created a draft in my Gmail because I have Cloud Code connected to my Gmail. And then I could send this threat brief to sock@flare.io every morning, with like just the top 5 things out of that big report, and then link to the big report, which is hosted locally at on my machine here. And so yeah, you could just create a newsletter as well, right? Like a lot of people who are creating newsletters right now are using this same technology, but I wanted to show you how to build like an open source threat feed. Now I chose for this, pretty standard stuff like CISA Kev, ransomware to live. You may have sources you want to add. As long as they have a web page that's free to access or an API, Claude can go find out how to use that and add it to your feed. And so, if you can't afford anomaly at your shop, right? Well, you can, get anomaly at home, as they would say. Not really, right? It's not going to be as good as like a big vendor who has a research team and who, like, or something like that. But it can, it can be a stopgap for you. So if we look at the skill for this, I think the skill for this is pretty easy, actually. This one is threat hunt. Let me find it in my thing here. Mm, ASM. Yeah. Okay. So this one here is again Cloud Code skill, right? So um, threat threat intel morning report, generate a morning threat intel HTML report for threat hunting analysts by aggregating open source keyless feeds like CISA, Kev, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Use this skill whenever the user asks for a daily threat briefing, et cetera. It will generate the report actually via a Python script it made. And when a skill builds its own code, it'll end up in the folder. So let me show you here. So this is the folder for the threat intel morning report skill. It's inside skills, right? And then here's that script, right? Generate report.py. AI created this. So it created a repeatable way to accomplish this task in a script. So it doesn't have to use the AI knowledge all the time, which is exactly what we want. And so that's great. It tells how to run the script, and that it's inside of the scripts folder, which you can see here. Okay, so it does an output, it has a header, it defines what we want in the report. And so I'm going to be honest. I'm gonna be honest with you guys. Like like blue teaming stuff is not really my bag. I am like a red teamer at heart, right? And so like I don't do the job day to day. So you might want different things in your morning briefing, and you might know that some of this is trash, spam, or like non-valuable information. Just tune it out. Just tell the AI, hey, I don't want any of this stuff, but I want all of this stuff. I don't want any of that stuff, but I want all of this stuff. And that's what you're going to do to tune your specific kind of morning report. Um, Now I see some people like, newsletter about Flare on how to not do Flare. I have enriched this with Flare data. So anything that's good in here is actually coming probably because we have a paid threat feed from Flare in here. So I wouldn't say that you could just like replace it instantly, but the reason why I work with Flare and why I worked with Flare before is because when I was a red teamer, the team at Flare, like the team that actually does the research for all of the breached creds and the threat intel and everything like that, it's the best in the space, honestly. And so that's why I went with Flare when I was a red teamer, and then developed this relationship to like do stuff with them, content. And I worked for them for a little while as their field CISO. And I did all that because I actually believed in the product. And the research team behind doing all of this stuff is one of the best. And so when I was doing red team assessments, I would use Flare data to show, hey, these creds are breached, or these creds are leaked and still active and can be used on your infrastructure and stuff like that. So yeah. Okay, so this is the skill file, and I'll share this with you guys later. And I will move this. Okay, we gotta move along though. Okay. Next one we have is report to detect. Okay, where is this one? That's okay. Cool. All right. So next one we have is basically a detection engineering package skill I made. I called it report to detect. And let me pull up a real example. So I just asked it to go find like a recent ransomware group, PlayCrypt, and basically I prompted it to create a report on this specific like entity, right? And so what it'll do is it'll take the entity and it'll go. I hard coded a whole bunch of places to have it go pull from, but I was like, hey, first write out a narrative for what we're detecting. So here we're looking at Play, also known as PlayCrypt. It's a ransomware group active since 2022. Was one of the most active ones in 2024. Initial access, and then it'll break down everything via their TTPs, basically. So, they're most, or they're likely coming from initial access from valid accounts, right? I mean, most threat actors are these guys. Exploitation of publicly facing applications, specifically like routers and firewalls and infrastructure that has web app front ends. So like Forta OS or anything like that. Um, and and so it'll give you in kind of like an overview here. And then it tells you the source of where it's pulling the information from and where the threat hunt came from. And then here is detections for a whole bunch of open source tools. So the TTP is the first thing. So the risk of the TTP, they use a tool called AD Find. I'm sure some of you have seen actors use AD Find for. Here's the code. And then here's the narrative. Play operators run AD Find to enumerate Active Directory users, computers, and trusts early in intrusion. AD Find is a legitimate admin utility, so detection keys on the binary name plus the AD query flags. And so here is pretty much everything you could try to need to do a hunt on this. So Sigma, um, Sigma syntax, Splunk syntax, Defender syntax, Elastic syntax, Chronicle Yara syntax, OS query syntax, Waza syntax. I don't know if I ever say that right. Is it Waza? Waza? How do you say what? I can't know. Velociraptor, and then capture telemetry from Sysmon. And so it'll take each of these TTPs and try to give you like like any type of open source tooling that would either be meant to detect or enable logging or to analyze or find usage or whatever. It'll try to give you that in each TTP. So the next TTP is NL test domain trust discovery. So Play uses the built-in NL test utility. Same thing here. And these are collapsible, right? So you have them for each one. And so it'll go through each TTP and give you kind of the like anything that can happen. Obviously, use Mimikatz, which you're all 8 billion. All 8 billion of you are Wazoo. Okay, Wazoo. Great. I see. I didn't know. Yeah. So you have all the TTPs and all of the open source tools that could be used to help you investigate or detect them in this report. And so this is a skill that I built last night. In our class, we do have a class called Red, Blue, Purple AI, and in the blue section, this skill came from that, where we used to have single little Chat GPT bots that built these, and you would tell them, "Hey, I want to build a Sigma rule, or a hash hunt, or use Velociraptor, or use Yara to look at like this activity here, and it would go out, and that single bot would give you, this syntax here, right? Or this rule or whatever. And we used to do that, but then we were like, that for every single thing is a horrible workflow. And so then we built it into a single report like this. And so then you have a whole bunch of indicators which are defanged but in the file system. So if you want to actually get the actual indicators, defanged meaning that they don't want this in, we don't want this in our HTML report, so like people are clicking on links and stuff like that, or like using this stuff. So all these are undefanged in the file system. And then just some like general narrative around this. So this is much more actionable. Now, what you can do is you can take the output from the newsletter. You can take the output from the newsletter, or not the newsletter, but the morning like update that we just showed in the previous skill, and you can actually forward it to like say, hey, anything that looks like or anything that's in the top 5 of the daily 24-hour threat feed, intel feed that we just made, create a detection engineering package for it. And you could have that waiting for you every day. And you could do it manually with, some of these checks. And I'm not guaranteeing all of these work out of, these are all mostly kind of templates. You might have to edit some of these syntax yourself, but this goes a long way in getting you started. Now, the next section would be like, okay, so every 24 hours that threat intel feed fires and I get some hopefully actionable intelligence. Then I create a detection engineering package for looking for those things. Okay, that's cool, but I'm still doing the work myself, which a lot of us want to do. That's great. But the next step would be to automate the AI doing the hunts for you and providing you with a little bit more information on, hey, I actually found this in our environment, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so that's the next stage. We're not going to show the full automation in here. We're going to leave it at the reporting and analyst enrichment phase here, operator enrichment here. So, okay. That's report to detect. Then we have a threat modeling tool that we built. So threat modeling is a fantastic thing for threat modeling is a fantastic tool that you can build, and we built an agent for it. And what we have been doing a lot of is AI testing here at Arcanum. So we do a lot of threat modeling for AI applications. So all of your companies right now, I'm pretty sure, I would bet money at, are being like, we need to develop features that are AI enabled and put them in our web app or put them in our application. For every enterprise you guys are working at right now, right? And this is absolutely a thing that's happening everywhere. So don't feel bad about it. It's happening everywhere. And so you at some point will be asked to defend or assess or do an architecture review, or just, somehow you'll be involved in this AI project. And you'll have to know about how to threat model it, basically. Like, what are the risks to this application that we're trying to defend against? And this is a new field, right? It's not exactly super well defined. I mean, more and more stuff is coming out every day, more and more actual threat modeling, like methodologies specific for AI stuff. But what we had at Arcanum was we had an assessment methodology to do red teaming on AI powered applications. And then we had a questionnaire that we use in the kickoff with the customer to do one of those assessments. And then we also reverse engineered that and kind of put it into a set of threat modeling questions. And so we built this skill to do AI threat modeling, or to do AI threat modeling of AI applications. And so I'm going to show you something here, which I love. It's a little bit of a rabbit hole, but that's okay. This site here is ZenML, the LLM Ops database. And so ZenML, the LLM Ops database, is just this project by this company called ZenML, which they collect case studies on companies making AI applications. And so you can look through here and be like, oh, cool, like Duolingo is doing unit test generation using LLMs. And so you can click in here, and the original source is linked at the top, and you can see it was a blog by Duolingo, and they talked about their architecture and how they're using LLMs. This resource is fantastic, honestly, for a whole bunch of reasons. The LLMOps database is super useful because it'll help you stay up to date on what the newest technologies are in in LLMs, which is job security, and we should be keeping up with the tech, right? It also helps you understand what other companies are using LLMs for, especially at the high level, right? Like, what are these big companies using LLMs for? What have they had successes with? What are their failures? Like, in a lot of these case studies, they'll talk about the failures in designing these systems, and the assumptions they had versus what they were actually able to do with LLMs and all this kind of stuff, right? And so this is a fantastic resource just to be learn about the tech in the AI space. Now, what we can do is we can go here and look at in our last class we did this one. People wanted to look at a betting site, right? How were betting sites um, using LLMs? And so we ended up looking at FanDuel, and FanDuel has a blog post in 2025 about how they're doing AI-powered betting assistance for sports wagering. And so you can look at this whole case study and you can read it, right? And you probably would, like, let's say FanDuel like invited me to do work on their bug bounty, and this was in scope, their AI-powered betting assistant. Um, and so it's got a whole bunch of information in it. It's also got the original source. Um, and so we built a skill where you can basically shove anything into it and it'll try to create a threat model for an AI application. And so this is what it looks like for this specific um, AI application that FanDuel made. We stuffed this one into our skill and it looks kind of like this. So here is a threat model of the source of that case study, right? And it gives you the narrative summary of the threat model, the threat model. It says FanDuel is AAI is a conversational assistant that helps people basically do betting research. It's built on Amazon Nova Lite and Nova Pro via Amazon Bedrock. Um, can the assistant autonomously place, modifier, or wager? Does it only draft off a bet slip that the customer confirms via the UI? So it starts to add a whole bunch of enrichment information and ideas around the threat model. And so it uses Adam Showstack's 4 big questions for the threat modeling methodology, as well as some additional ones we've added in here. And so Adam Showstack, if you follow his threat modeling methodology, he has like 4 big questions. What are we working on? So this is the whole description technically of the chatbot, and then it built for us a data flow diagram of this application and how it works, which is super useful. And then it builds us a component inventory inside of the section. So basically, uh, Bedrock get intent call, um, EC2 EKS services, Amazon RDS, DynamoDB for some of the data storage, Elasticache and Redis, etc. And some are assumed and some are actually confirmed via the blog and the case studies. And then it gets down to kind of assets and crown jewels. What can go wrong? And so, this gives you, for at least for us, it gives us a great starting place, like of a discussion. So what we'll do is we'll do a threat model of an AI application from our conversation with the customer, um, and we'll use this skill or something very like it to kick off some just like what can go wrong questions in threat modeling. Okay, so the first one, if you're talking about a FanDuel AI chatbot, right? Well, can we use prompt injection to force an unintended bet action, either by the user or maybe on another user's account? And so it marks all of these as like, the OWASP LM top 10 or the Atlas category, whatever. But this is really, we just want to start talking about as defenders and assessors, of which, red teamers are defenders too. They just break things instead of fix them. But we're trying to help. And so, talking about, unintended bet actions, let's start talking about that. And then can we force the chatbot by repeatedly chatting to it or poisoning in its data somehow, force it to give favorable pricing or odds to any of the betting, which is what this whole tool is for. Actually, it turns out that a FanDuel chatbot is a chatbot. When you go to FanDuel, it helps you do research on odds or building complex parlays in betting. Cross customer conversation bleed is obviously something we test all the time to see if we can get access to other people's sessions and chats. Um, Responsible gaming bypass field jailbreak. This one, it rated pretty high. I would actually put this as low. They have a lot of things in the AI for FanDuel that are like responsible gaming kind of checks to make sure you're not betting, or like to remind you of the amount that you're betting is high, or you're trading unfavorably for some reason based on odds, and then they'll warn you, if you've been on the site for too long. They're trying to somehow push at least responsible gambling, or at least be seen like that. And so if we could get the chatbot to ignore those things, that might be an issue. But this is much lower than high. So, again, AI tends to inflate risk a lot. And so it basically has a whole bunch of lists of things that we could think about that could go wrong. Um, then it also, in Adam Showstock's Big Four questions, what are we going to do about it? And then it would prioritize all of those T codes that are above about, like, things we're worried about, into, architecture and recommendations to prevent or fix. And so this is all really good information for your guys' side, the defenders. And then when it's done, you have to answer, like, did we do a good job on doing that? And so this is a fantastic starter for a threat model. And you can do this for general other sites too. You can do this for uh, web apps. You could do this for network deployments. You could do this on a specific application deployment. Whatever you wanted to do is build a custom threat model here. Um, so the skill for this, if we want to just look at it, just because that's kind of the format we've been following, is here. Let me find it. Skills, AI threat model. So again, in my Cloud Code skills folder, here's the skill.md. And if you open it, it'll open in VS Code. And here it is. Description. AI LM specific threat modeling from a single URL reads a public case study, blog post, product page, docs page, or architecture write-up. So if you wanted to use this on one of your internal apps, you could just paste in any information that comes off the Confluence page or the developer, or, like, the architecture diagram, or even the transcript of you interviewing the developer when you're getting into the security kind of threat modeling phase. Driven by our questionnaire and Adam Showstock's big questions. We want to map it to the LM Top 10 MITRE Atlas Stride, AI Stride specifically. So I actually should put AI Stride there. That's fine. So that's just the description. It uses a whole bunch of tools. This is a sub in the description. You can allow which tools you want on the command line. So on the command line, it can use Bash fully. It can read and write files. It can edit files. It can grep files and glob files. It can use web fetch, go out to the internet. It can use web search, go out to the internet. And it can spawn sub agents and build sub skills if it wants. You don't always have to have this section when you build a skill. If I just leave this blank, it's just considered that you want this to run everything, but you'll get that pop-up in Cloud Code that says, hey, accept this or accept this always. You'll get that. You can mitigate that by doing dangerously skip all permissions, but obviously that can be dangerous. So AI threat modeling from the URL. So it's got a whole bunch of stuff that we've coded in here. I'll let you guys look at this when I give you the text files and you can check them out. I just want to make sure that I don't dox myself. When I release these skills. So I'll probably send them to the Flare team in the next couple of days. But again, all of this stuff, all of this skill stuff starts out as me talking to Claude Code saying, I want this thing. And then iteratively, based on my knowledge of what the thing is, so like an AI threat model, is just talking to it and being like, let's change this. Let's change this. I don't like this. I hate this. I want to add this. I want to remove this. Let's find a way to include this information. What are other people doing for this? These are all the types of questions that I just talk with a prompt in Claude Code. And it's like, okay, we'll change the skill. We'll change the skill. We'll change the skill. And then eventually you get a really good skill. So again, good skills are built off of expertise that is usually not verbatim in the model. Usually, if I just say, hey, Claude, give me an AI threat modeling skill, it'll do that, but it'll just be a shitty skill. So, it usually comes from, a little bit better research into what you want, what you need, what you think is in depth and stuff like that. Here's a tip for, from one of our classes is, in order to force AIs to be complete in their analysis, one of the things that you need to do because AIs are extremely lazy. There's this thing called completeness bias in AIs. And completeness bias means that you're going to give this AI a giant task, like to build this threat model. And it's going to think to itself, oh my God, that's a lot of work. That's a lot of text. That's a lot of things I have. Like that case study is like pages and pages of text. Like maybe I'll just look at the top 5 paragraphs. And so there's this thing called completion bias that is built in that, the models exhibit that basically they will attempt to do like the top 5 things instead of the full methodology, or they will attempt to finish the task faster by scoping its work into a much smaller piece of work, and omitting other important parts of the work. And so, one of the things that you can do to force completion bias to go away is build a completeness checklist at the end of your skill, which means a markdown based checklist. So, this is the syntax for a markdown based checklist. It's a dash and then a space and then the 2 brackets with nothing in between them. And put your completion criteria inside a markdown based checklist. This forces the model to, at the end of the run, to be like, did I pass all of these gates basically? And if it did, and if it says it hasn't for this specific AI threat model, then it will attempt to go back and do the work. This is what a lot of pro prompters use to fight against completion bias. This is a tip out of the class that I'm building right now on offensive security bots. Markdown based checklists are a super hardcore great tip for fighting completion bias. And then we have our like reporting and stuff here. So that is AI threat modeling kind of skill. And again, like I said, I'll distribute these later. So let me just take a pause on the skills. We have one more to show. And let me take a pause though to read questions. So let's see here. Do 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 do. Let's see here. Offloading things like building the Sigma rules of Gemini for free is usually better, but you have to be careful because Gemini Free 2S allows training off your input. Yeah, so a lot of sites will, like almost all of the free versions of Frontier Labs, they'll tell you that they train off of the free queries, right? So you should expect that. Gemini, uh, Gemini and Google, I think if I default the free, call is a thing. So, building that question, Ryan's talking about the detection package skill that we built. So the detection package skill, um, all of that is usually in training data all over the place, like how to build a YAR rule, how to build syntax for SPL, all that kind of stuff is so well documented all over the internet that it's baked into the training data. And so, like, usually when you want syntax for building something for a specific flow, the AIs are pretty good at it. And so, like, you could use a local model to do a lot of that building of those things. But the problem is then you have to get into complex kind of coding, right? So here we're just going to prompt these skills into existence and then talk or type and make them better over time. And Claude will build the skill for us and the agent for us. If I have to use a local model, it means that I have to set up open code. I have to stand up a local model, probably using LM Studio, which is what most people use to stand up local models. I have to download the local model, so I have to the processing power to run it, and I have to have the space for the model on the hard disk. And then, depending on how much memory or GPU power I have, that determines on how fast the model runs. And usually, it's very slow for local models. It's way slower than you're used to using in Claude Code or something like that. And then, what you don't think about when you get into this is that if you don't have a hardcore system with like multiple graphics cards, or you have a MacBook Studio with 512 gigabytes of shared VRAM or integrated RAM, if you don't have one of those type of machines, what you don't realize is that these agent harnesses add a whole bunch of prompts in the back end to do agent work. Things like, hey, I'm spawning you as a sub agent to do X tasks. Da, 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 da. And so when you have a local model hooked up to OpenCode, in order just to load that pre-prompting, to tell the thing it's an agent, it adds a ton of inference time, to a whole bunch of runtime to your thing. So when I have a MacBook Studio here, I have some, great models on it, but they are slow as molasses when running through an agent harness like OpenCode. Now that doesn't matter to me because the local model, I'm not paying for tokens, so it can run however long, and I'm only paying for power here at my house, right? Which is nothing. But they are very, very slow. So using local models, you'll have to do some engineering, and it'll be way slower than usual. So, okay. Oh, you meant better for cost. Yeah, that's true. For sure. And like we're getting there. We're like, I talked about GLM 5.2. This connector right here is actually using their API. I'm not using a local model. So GLM 5.2, off of even just their API, I'm paying this company ZAI for access to their API. It's like 1/5 the price of a lot of other enterprise models. Now, the one agent harness I'm not showing here is Codex. Codex is actually really good for development and security right now. It's probably our second favorite agent harness, other than Claude Code, and Codex is fantastic. So if you're a if you're a person who likes the open AI ecosystem, it is super dope right now. It's in the best shape it's ever been in. It lacks a couple features that other agent harnesses don't have, but that's a thing. Okay, we have a Q&A box too. Okay, so have I experimented with workflows for driving Claude for these use cases? Yeah, I've used workflows. A lot of times your skills too, you can have them invoke workflows as well. So workflows might take the place of that markdown based checklist for fighting completion bias for us, but all of our skills are built internally, like not these demo ones that we're showing, but like in our internal skills that we use for a lot of this stuff, um, are heavily built with custom engineering around Claude Code that we do, and like this markdown based checklist completeness audit, and a whole bunch of other gates we have too. And so workflows might be a thing, that can combat against some of that stuff, but not all of it. And so we're still figuring out how workflows fits into, our skills here. So, is there a time period if we change the skills to update the process in Claude? Is there any time period if we change the skill to get an update or process from Claude? No. So what you can do is you make the skill and then you run it on something and you're like, oh, I need to change something. Just click the stop button, right? If you're in Claude Code here, um, and you're in here, you're in a chat, there'll just be the stop button here. You can just click stop, and then just type in your change and then click go again. And the way AIs work is they send the entire chat history. So they'll see the last question you asked it, and then they'll see that you stopped that run and then you amended it with a new one, and it'll just amend the new command. So you just need to stop it and rerun. Um, let's see. Did you get permission to scan the AI agent from FanDuel? No, no, no. We just did a threat model on it, so I don't need permission to do a threat model on it. Um, so also FanDuel has an open bug bounty, so implied permission is there as well. So can we run the exact same skill with our Claude? You should be able to use a lot of these as with the native guardrail in place. Sorry, I didn't see the full question. Maybe I'll give you the files for these. Load them into your skill folder if you trust me. Make sure to review them first. But these are all made by me. And load them into your skill folder, and then give them a run and see if they work, and give them a couple runs in new context and not in the same chat. When I mean new context, I mean like actually go to Claude Code and let me close this and do like new new session, right? Because you don't want to keep on asking it to use a skill in the same session that it's already refused in, right? If you ask it to use a skill and it's like, no, I can't do that, and then you ask it again, please use the skill, it's just going to see that it's already refused, and that's poisoned what we call the context. So every time use a new session and see if it'll work, and try that a few times to get the skill running. If you're not in the CVP, sometimes it just takes it a couple times to go through. Other things that you can do is modify the skill description to say, hey, this is explicitly for blue team work. We're doing this to protect people, blah blah blah. Put a whole bunch of like prompting in there that says this is for a blue team perspective. sometimes that works. Also, if you have an authorization document or something like that, you can put it on the file system and the AI read it. This is a trick that we use all the time for refusal management. Is we'll create a text-based artifact like a PDF or something that basically states the authorization and scope of the project. And Claude Code really likes that. It's like, oh, cool. I see that you have a document here that looks like authorization. Sometimes we fake it, but we'll go ahead and work. So these are all refusal management things that you can do. So let's see here. Yes, the session's being recorded. How does the LinkedIn scraper work with Microsoft's terms of service? Historically, they haven't been keen on people scraping their resources. So a lot of it you can actually get through Google scraping. So a lot of information off of LinkedIn actually gets cached in Google Cache. And so you can just do a search through Google and get most of the information that you need from a cached Google page. Yeah, I mean, some of the LinkedIn scraping like uses a web browser to grab things. And the I don't know how to answer your question or if I want to answer your question. So sorry. Um, yeah. Okay, let's see here. Um, okay, so the last one that I want to show here is a tabletop skill. We released this one already. And this one we basically said, hey, we want a really good tabletop skill for us to use when we're doing tabletops. And let me see if I have it here. No, no. Okay, let me find the tabletop skill. One sec. Where is the web browser? Where did it go? Okay. This is our flare brief. Close that. Sorry, a lot of tabs, everybody, lots of skills. Okay. This is where it was supposed to be. No, 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 no. Okay. We will just open it again then. Okay. So threat model, report to detections, threat model, OSINT enrich. Okay. Not in there either. Sorry, I thought I had everything pre-opened up for the demo. It should be in Claude skills tabletop access. Okay, so Claude skills tabletop skill, and then should be in examples, and then okay, cool. Dependency confusion. Great. Okay. So what we built for this skill is when I was part of Ubisoft as the CISO. We're gonna get to Maestro like really quickly, but yeah. When I was part of Ubisoft as the CISO, we paid big companies a lot of money to come do threat modeling or tabletop exercises for us. And we wanted to do is create a skill that created like a tabletop that was on par or better than a lot of like people you would pay to do the threat model. And so we built this. We released it a while ago. The skills in my Claude Code skills, so it's called tabletop exercise, and this one's already open source on our GitHub. But you can look at the skill, and it creates a comprehensive tabletop with a facilitator guide and a participant guide, and then you can just describe the scenario. And it uses a whole bunch of best practices to build a tabletop. This is my personal one, so I'll have to change some of the pathing in here. But it builds a tabletop based on the scenario with like the scenario overview, the objectives, fake injects that help people like have conversations, etc. So this is the skill here. It is pretty long. This one we put a lot of work into. And so like, going over this markdown here would probably outside of the scope of this thing. But let me show you kind of what the output looks like. So we go here. Here is one that I generated last night. If I go to examples and I go to dependency confusion, and let's use the facilitator HTML. Okay, so this is, I told Claude Code, I said, let's create a tabletop exercise for this scenario. An attacker basically does a dependency confusion attack on an organization. I didn't necessarily say the organization, but I described the attack that I wanted to do the tabletop on. So if we go down here, you can see that this is the facilitator guide. So this is like the dungeon master of the tabletop, right? And so this gives a whole bunch of information on how to run the tabletop, and you can use this as like a screen share and show certain sections of it to the participants. But it tells about the executive summary. So this simulates a dependency confusion, aka dependency substitution attack against Helios Robotics. A threat actor discovers the name of an internal-only NPM package called Helios Telemetry that the engineering org publishes to its private JFrog Artifactory registry. The internal package name is unscoped, and several developers' NPM configuration is not pinned to the internal registry, and there is no scoped Helios registry mapping for this package. So basically, dependency confusion. An attacker could find this reference in code, go out to npm, register this package Helios telemetry on npm, and then if the user's npm configuration is not pinned to their internal artifactory, it will go, if the version of the public one on the public npm marketplace is higher, it will download that one. And so basically what attackers do is they'll look through your JavaScript code or code that you put on GitHub and try to find private or non-public package names, and they'll go out and register them on npm as a really high version, like 99.00. And then if your developers' machines are not configured right when they do pulling in all the latest packages, it will pull the one from the public npm repository, and that could have backdoor code in it, so they can get their machine backdoored. This is a very forward-facing red team tactic that we use here at Arcanum, and it's what bad guys are, I would say it's the second most likely way that we see breaches happen right now, other than credential leaks through some way, shape, or form, whether that's whatever, they get hit by ransomware or whatever. I don't really know what the initial access is, but if attackers will first go the easy route. They'll go to the dark web forums or cred stealers or all the other stuff, sealer logs, and they'll go try to find people who work at a company they want to break into, and they'll just buy access, right? That's the first way. And then the second or third way is either compromising external infrastructure portals, like we talked about earlier, like Fortinet or Cisco or Avanti or something like that. They'll try to break into those because those are full of web vulns a lot of times. And then on par with that is package hijacking or dependency confusion. And so this is the third one we see in a lot of breaches, is they'll go do OSINT on your organization, any open source code you've ever revealed. They'll look inside all of your JavaScript files, and eventually they'll find a privately named package, and they'll try to register it, hoping that one of your developers has this misconfiguration, and they just get their bad guy code gets slurped into one of your developers' machines. So this is a tabletop for that scenario. It goes through how to run the exercise as a facilitator. It gives you an opening script, some ground rules to establish kind of the time breakdown of each of the phases, some best practices, closing script, and then some common issues for this type of tabletop. So the team dismisses the EDR alert, the team fixates on the laptops instead of the CI agent build, etc. Then it gives you the scenario overview, an attack timeline of what actually happens. It gives you exercise objectives as the facilitator guide. It gives you injects that you can share via screen share. Now, these are pseudocode injects. They're not meant to look exactly like your EDR or your SOAR platform. But most people who are technical, at least on the technical side of the tabletop, should be able to look at this and be like kind of grok it, right? And it's made, the artifact is made to be pseudocode on purpose so that it starts up conversation in the tabletop. People have to actually read it, right? Now, you could change this skill to say, hey, we use this SOAR or we use this EDR. Always make the artifact in an output that looks like CrowdStrike or that looks like whatever you use, right? And so you could change the skill. Right now, I have it basically pumping out pseudocode for the artifacts, basically. But when we did our tabletops with like big name vendors, they didn't even get to this level. They like didn't even provide fake artifacts for us to muse over, right? And so this is already like better than most. And then it tells you like what the expected response should be from the technical people. You can also do expected response for executives if you're doing an executive based tabletop or a hybrid one. Conditional responses, and then kind of flags to watch for each part of the scenario. So that happens for every piece of the timeline. So EDR alert, network egress, root cause analysis, hands-on keyboard, credential theft, containment, and blast radius. So once you get through those, then it has like a section to verify that we have a run book to deal with that process internally, or atomics that test it. And then it does a gap analysis. And so as the facilitator, you can say, hey, inside of this part of the tabletop, like we realize like we have no procedures in place to monitor for or to check the configuration of scoping for NPM, right? Or it was adequate or inadequate or whatever. So anyway, so this is our tabletop skill. It's already been published. We think it's pretty dope. We've used it for several people, and that is a tabletop skill. So I'll share all these when we're done. That's tabletop. All right, the last thing is automation, and I know we're over. Hopefully Flair doesn't get angry at me. Oh no, Angela says it's okay. If we go a couple minutes over. Okay. Automation. Okay, so a lot of these things are things that I showed you, like, hey, we have to talk to Claude Code here and be like, run this skill, right? Well, the newest way to do scheduled tasks is actually just routines here. So this is the GUI, right? But routines exist everywhere. So you can just go to routines here, and you can see I'm running like the BMW bug bounty. I'm running my agent on here, and so it's going to do whatever. But you can put a new routine and say local, and then you can schedule these things to run hourly, daily, weekly, or weekly custom, right? And so hourly is most often what you're going to want, or like daily is most often what you're going to want for the reporting function. So you'll say this, and then you'll call this, like, let's say we want to automate our threat intel feed. So we'll just say, TI feed daily, and we'll say description. We'll just keep it the same. Be like, run our open source threat intel feed skill and set it up as a draft in our email inbox to send to the team, and also make the HTML report that has more detail in it on this file system. Cool. So that's all you have to tell the routine. And then you say, I want this to run in auto mode for all of these. So make sure you're always in auto mode, and then choose your model. So we want Opus 4.8, and then select the folder that you want to operate in. So whatever project folder you're in. And then we want this to run daily at 6 a.m. or whatever, right? Before everyone starts work. And we'll select folder. We'll just use C for right now. And then you go create. And now this will run that skill every day at 6 a.m. And that's how it works. Now, I've shown you a whole bunch of pieces of the puzzle with skills. What could you do if you had more time and you wanted to put it all together? You could probably get to something like this. So I built this last night in a few hours. It takes all of those sources that we did before, and it builds a cool pew pew map for your security operations monitor. But it also has all these feeds for Kev reports, ransomware, ransom reports, all these live threat intel feeds from open sources. It'll give us daily reporting on C2 infrastructure, malicious URLs with enrichment, IP reputation, domain reputation, if we want to look it up. And it's a local running web app that I built in 2 days. And it's pretty dope. And so you can pull whenever you want. And you can also change reports to detections. You can also, in here, the next version is just like in any of these sidebars here of the Kev catalog or reports or ransomware. The next version actually just has Go Hunt. There's a little button on every one of these, and it will basically kick off the skill that we already made here. The where is it? Shoot, did I close it? It's the one that gives you the detection engineering package. It will have a button here, and it'll kick off the detection engineering package skill and build you a detection engineering and hunt package for, the group that did, this hack, or the TTP that came out of this catalog or whatever. And so this was made. I'm not going to lie, it took a day and a half to make this. So I started working on it the other day, combining a whole bunch of our internal skills. But this is what you can get with a little elbow grease. So, all right, the last thing I promise is Maestro. Maestro is an application that you can download from GitHub, and it wraps around Claude Code or Open Code, and it's called Run Maestro on GitHub. And what Maestro allows you to do is it wraps around Claude Code, and it allows you to basically take and run skills via a wizard, and all the way to completion, basically. So a lot of times what will happen is you'll run a big project. So when we do pen testing with our AI agents, a common problem is that they are designed either by the model manufacturer or someone else to give up after a certain amount of tasks. And so we end up having to babysit them a lot. And what Maestro does is it takes a piece of work, like let's say I tell Maestro I want to do a bug bounty hunt on BMW. They have an open scope program. We want to go look at these sites that are in scope and do automated pen testing or bug bounty hunting on them, right? If I do that in Claude Code, it will give up after a little while. What Maestro does is it takes our skills and it understands everything that we've built in our skills directory, and it builds that markdown-based checklist. And instead of the skill handling running the markdown-based checklist and trying to verify itself, what it does is it starts up a new Claude Code agent for every task in the markdown-based checklist, and it does not stop working until everything is checked off in that checklist. So if I say go pen test this company, well, pen testing, if you break it down, is composed into like 40 or so individual actions: reconnaissance, network scanning, vulnerability analysis, exploitation, pivoting, and inside of each one of those is like 5 other subtasks or something like that. If you if you gave that and you said go pen test this, whatever, and you just said that to Claude Code will probably give up after half of recon or something like that, and you have to do a lot of engineering to get it to go. Maestro, you can do new agent, guided setup. You can choose Claude Code, and we'll just call this like BMW, or we'll just say, I don't know, whoever is not going to nuke me from orbit for using them as a demo. Well, I'm not actually going to test them. I'm just going to show the setup wizard, so it's fine. So I'll just say BMW has an open scope vulnerability disclosure program. The underlying agent framework I want to use is Claude Code, and then we'll just put it, select folder, continue, and that's fine. Okay, and it starts a wizard, and so here I'll just go, we want to start and authorize bug bounty hunts on BMW with all of our provided skills. That should be all of the Armada skills. And it uses an AI to build the markdown-based checklist. And so it takes a while. It's going to look for all my skills. It's going to understand the requirements, etc. And it will build this. It'll take a second. But eventually, if I close out of this, I'll show you what it looks like. Oh, well, it finished anyway. This is a development project, so I'm using Maestro development here. And if I go to my auto run feature over here, you can see the markdown based checklist. So I'm building our internal testing product here called Armada, and it broke down some of the things I needed, tester readiness and packaging, into a markdown based checklist, and it will use individual Claude Code sections to accomplish each one of these tasks. and then it will not move on until all tasks are checked off. So it has this auto run feature, which you will not find anywhere else. The auto run feature inside of Maestro is fantastic. The other great thing about Maestro is that it does not use the API keys from Claude Code. It uses a library to drive the command line of the TUI that I talked about for Claude Code, meaning that you don't have to use API credits to use Maestro on a project. It can still use your Claude Code Max subscription, which is significantly cheaper than using the API. So also a crazy, crazy benefit of using Maestro. There's so much I could go into Maestro, but that's about all we have today. So I think we're done for today. All this stuff and more, we teach in a class at Arcanum called Red, Blue, Purple AI. We just did the last one really recently, but we're going to announce dates for the next one pretty soon. We go over offensive bots a little bit. We go over defensive bots a little bit. We go over purple team cases. We talk more about these agents and harnesses. We talked about prompt engineering. We talked about MCPs that exist already for existing security tools, all kinds of stuff. So yeah, this is this is something that if you're interested in, we do this class once a quarter, usually live. And so yeah, we run that at Arcanum. So. Cool. Well, thanks for hanging out with me talking about agents. And yeah, hopefully it was useful and kind of like tickled your brain a little bit on what you can do with different agents inside of an agent framework and agent harness. And hopefully it made sense. And I will talk to Flair about distributing the skills files for everybody so that can be your base and you can go from there. So.